everyone. I'm really excited to do this episode, and I feel like I start every single episode with that, but honestly, every time I get a guest on board, it's gonna be an amazing episode, and I already know it. So without further ado, I'll pass on to my guest today.
You should go first. You're much more experienced.
No, sure, but yeah, okay, I'm Pratiksha. So I've been working as a data engineer only for 4 weeks so far, so I'm very new to that industry. But before that, I was working as a software engineer for about 2 years. And before that, I was doing a PhD in physics. So yeah, I've got a bit of experience in a few different sectors, but I'm still trying to figure things out. And aside from all the tech stuff, I love cooking, I love eating. Food is a big passion of mine. I also love watching football and reading books, and those are the things that keep me occupied when I'm not doing my work.
I mean,
so cool.
I just wanted to say, like, I didn't know that you went through so many different sort of industries and so many different like roles. I think that's really good because, for example, when I was on my grad scheme, I did DevOps, I did web development, I did architecture, and then went to SRE, cloud, and it's really good. I think exploring it in your early career is really important and really shaped you as a person. And also, I love food as well, so relatable.
It is absolutely
Yay! It's life. Food is actually life.
It is,
I
isn't
just
it?
wanted
That's
to
it.
ask, yeah, sorry. With your PhD, what did you do in physics? Because it's such a fascinating topic.
Yeah, so I was in particle physics and it was in neutrino physics. So I got to go to Japan like 9-10 times. I know getting paid to go to Japan and eat food is like the dream. I mean, I did a lot of work alongside that as well. But yeah, it was a really great time. Academia was really difficult though, so I wasn't cut out for it. It made me quite resilient, but like academia is very hard industry. But I'm really like it taught me to be confident and public speaking skills. I learned so much during it that I wouldn't have got the experience anywhere else. So
yeah, I love that. Like I have a friend, Eleni, from my Inspiring Figures like segment, and she's a PhD student. She was a PhD student and she went through academia herself, and she was explaining like all her struggles, and I had no idea that doing a PhD required so much from you. And I know, Sonia, you're
currently doing one.
currently, aren't you? Yeah, so that's a good segue into you.
So I'm doing a PhD in statistics and artificial intelligence with application to medical data. On the side, I just started a blog with my partner, and we just talk about data things and other things that annoy us in the community. I don't know, just a rant. Then during the day, every morning, well, not every morning, but I really like to gym. And recently, due to restrictions, we took up roller skating as well. I suck, but it's a fun time. Instagram really persuaded me to do roller skating. There's just such amazing music. People do amazing dance moves. It's such a fun time. So yeah, it's really fun time.
That's amazing. I mean, like, I know a few people who roller skate. Yeah, just looking. I like looking at it. I like watching people do it, but I don't think I could do it. But yeah.
The first time you get on it, it's so scary because obviously you don't stop.
Yeah, how do you stop? Is there like brakes or something? I mean, that might be a
skates. Yeah, if you have quad skates, there's like a rubber thing at the front of your shoe, and you just use that to stop. But then there's also other ways, like you could just put your foot perpendicular to the other one, so the wheels kind of stop themselves, because obviously they don't roll when they're on the other side.
That's so interesting. Wow.
But they usually have brakes. You can take them off or keep them depending on how experienced you are. I am not, so I keep them on.
I think anyone doing roller skating just looks so cool. Like just on the little roller skates going around. Like loads of people do it by where I live now. Before the pandemic, no one did roller skating, and now whenever I go for a walk, I just see hordes and hordes of people on their like little roller skates, and everyone looks so cool doing it.
It's definitely an Instagram thing, and also on TikTok. I don't know if you've seen it on TikTok, but it's a trend. It's cool. It's awesome. Also, your blog with your partner, that sounds amazing. I'd love to find out more about that.
You can it's called Accessed Memory if you want to. It's a very shady plug. I'm so sorry. It's a joke on like random accessed memory, because I was building my PC when we were thinking of it. But yeah, if anybody wants to check it out, we're doing random stuff. We're currently working on a blog post that analyzes Reddit questions aimed at men and women, and we're basically looking at what like the language differences. It's a very basic thing. We just try to introduce people to like different ways you could use AI, and we try to make it very user-friendly, so you don't have to know anything before you get into it. But it's a really fun like side project to do.
Amazing. Sonia, I think we need to go on another podcast because I think this is a really important topic that we should discuss, and I think a lot of people will be really interested in that. But yeah, no, thank you for your introductions, and again, it's really great to have you both here. So just, just moving on to the podcast now. Like I said, thank you both for coming on my podcast to talk about such a personal topic. I really. So just to kick us off, for those who may not be familiar with what imposter syndrome is, what is imposter syndrome? How would you describe it? And as I said, it's a very personal topic, so it definitely varies in terms of experiences from person to person. But yeah, kick us off. Let us know.
Well, to me personally, I'll let Pratiksha speak in a second. It's just shortly the feeling that you're not good enough to do whatever you're doing. But as a good researcher, I Googled the definition beforehand and picked up the first resource, very rigorous research. And it says it's an internal experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive. And what I liked about it is it also mentioned the different applications of that feeling of not good enough. So it's usually intelligence, achievement, perfectionism. But then I think it can also extend to social context and the way you perceive your own body as well. I think body image can also be something that you could compare it to. That's how I define it.
Yeah, that's a really good definition. And I'm really glad that you included the body image thing, because again, I really relate to that as someone who explores a lot in the fitness space.
I'm going to go for it in like a bit of a non-serious way, and then I'll go back to being serious. So whenever I think of imposter syndrome, I always think of the meme with the dogs at the computer, and then it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I always think of that, like that sense of like, you're in this workplace environment, but you don't belong there. Like your brain's telling you like, what are you doing here? Who do you think you are? Like you think you're just going to rock up to work and like just go on the PC and pretend to be doing your work. You're just a dog in this corporate environment. Like that's how I think of it. Like, so not when I'm experiencing it, but when I'm away from it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I don't belong there. What am I doing? I don't really understand. Yeah, so that's how I visualize it, that meme. But yeah, like I said, in a more serious way, it's that feeling, and like Sonia touched on it, it's feeling like I'm not being confident, a feeling of not belonging in a place where you definitely do belong, but it's just your brain telling you you don't belong there.
It's one of those, isn't it? And I love that you used that meme as an example, because that is, you know what, I'm going to use that moving forward. It's perfect. Yeah, definitely.
And it also it has a line that I think, I'm assuming you as a PhD, I think you said that a lot, but me and my friends say that so often as well. It's just one line of like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Especially because people think that PhDs are very intelligent. It's not true. So that's the one way. Well, that's true. We're all stupid. But it's a really good way of saying you're just stuck in one topic and I have no idea about anything else really.
Yeah, and for me, I think imposter syndrome is one of those things that it's like a fear that it's a feeling of dread. That feeling of fear that at any moment someone is going to be like, can I see you in my office? Or can you jump on this Zoom call with me? And then tell me and ask me hard questions that they then will confirm their thoughts that I'm actually not qualified enough. And this is really silly, but in all of my jobs that I've ever had, I've always imagined my manager or like supervisor coming up to me to say that. I've always played it in my head that I'm gonna get caught. Like this whole time, I'm just a really good actress, and I don't know. It's one of those things. It's really tough, and sometimes it's a hard feeling to shake off. But yeah, that's what we'll try and discuss today and unpick. But yeah, thank you both for sharing that. So my follow-up question to that is, why do you think we experience imposter syndrome in the first place? And an additional question that I actually added just before we jumped on, because I was thinking about it this morning, but why do you think women experience it more than men? So, for example, there's been moments where my partner and I are like doing a similar thing, like we're about to go through an experience that is sort of like a shared experience, because we both, it's basically the same thing, but just different situations, I guess. But I feel this dread, I feel this fear that I'm going to be found out, I feel that imposter syndrome, whereas he is completely fine. He's like fine that he didn't tick up all the boxes, whereas I'm stressing out about this one little tiny box that I don't know about. And yeah, so let's dive into that. Anyone want to go
Would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. So like when I saw this question before, I was like, okay, I'll just make some notes on a piece of paper. I just started writing and writing and writing. And before you knew it, I'd filled up a whole A4 piece of paper of why I feel like I experienced imposter syndrome. I think like imposter syndrome is a great blanket term to cover a whole host of other issues that you might be experiencing. So I might just read off some of them if that's okay. I won't go into too many, but like that feeling of whether you belong or not. And then I also think it comes down to whether the environment you're in is supportive or if it's toxic. That can also trigger it. Issues of diversity and inclusion, like feeling like you're not represented in the environment you're in. Also mental health conditions, it always makes you like second guess yourself if you've got feelings of anxiety, feelings of low confidence, all of this stuff that can also trigger it. And then like even like stuff like hormones, like the week before my period, I feel horrible. Like I feel like I'm like completely worthless, and then that triggers my imposter syndrome. I'm like, yeah, it's like a whole host of different feelings, structural systems, your upbringing, your personal experience, like all of these other things can trigger my imposter syndrome. I think it's really difficult to put it down to one thing because it might just be that one thing on that particular day. But when I've experienced it as in like the 4 or 5 years in my job roles, I feel like different things trigger at different times, and it's not just triggered by that one particular thing.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I think everything you mentioned is so true, and I was kind of reading about the topic beforehand because I didn't want to come in empty-minded. But it's also like a very common thing. So from what I've heard, 70% of people experience it at least once in their lifetime. And I don't want to go all evolutionary psychology because I don't think it's a perfect subject as well. But it kind of makes sense when you think about us being social animals. We want to belong, and that belonging also means that we're good enough to be here, and wherever we are, if we think that we're missing one part, we're suddenly not good enough to be anywhere that we stand. But I think like there's a lot of research as well just talking about the pattern of ethnic minorities and women particularly feeling like they're not represented in wherever they are, and so you are more likely to find yourself feeling inadequate. But also I think like childhood experiences, if you have very overprotective parents or with high family expectations, there's always the joke of like, oh, my parents immigrated to US and now they want me to be a doctor. Stuff like that. It's
that was
like
me.
Kind of a joke.
That was me too. I was
well, you became a doctor anyways.
Well, I applied to medical school and didn't get in, like, until I got into physics through clearing. Like, for me, it was until I was 18. All of these unrealistic expectations put on yourself. So then you've got this fear of failure constantly. Like, even if you do really well, like, say you achieved a first, oh, but you didn't come top of your class, though, did you? It's not that great an achievement. So you always, like, even when you do achieve, your body can't, your mind isn't like, just shut up. You achieved. My mind can't do that to me. My mind's like, oh, but you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do that. Like celebrating your own victories as well.
It was exactly the same for me as well. I wanted to do computer science to really top universities, and my teachers told me I would get in. There are some issues with exams. The entire school did poorer than we expected, but I was left crying for 3 days at clearing, and I was begging somebody in Manchester to take me in. I called her 3 times. That woman had no soul. But in Leeds, they actually, I explained to them my story, being like, look, underperformed, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, that's a real shame. look, I'll talk to the head of school and we'll see what you can do. If you write us a recommendation, a letter and a confirmation from your head of school that we can do this, we'll let you in. And they let me in, and Lise has been a great experience, and I'm here for 5 years. Love the people. So yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that one. Yeah. My dad wanted me to be either an actress or a doctor. I don't know how.
I love that. I love that. I wanted to be an actress, but they were like, you need to be a doctor. And I was like, okay. But then I actually failed
I had the choice.
Exam. Yeah, I failed my med school exam, you know, before you actually apply that exam before. And then I ended up going into biomed instead, which was the next best thing. But even then, like, even though I got good grades and stuff, there were still moments where I was like, oh, so-and-so beat me. Then exactly. I'd be like, and then I'd tell my parent, and then my parents wouldn't really ask, but then I'd sort of naturally say, oh, but just because I got this grade, it didn't mean I was on top of the class. And then I just felt worse about myself. And then I feel like those thought patterns, I sort of brought it into the workplace. And so there were moments in the first year at work where I really struggled with feeling imposter syndrome, because I was like I just had low self-esteem. I looked at because I was part of a graduate scheme. So all the different graduates sort of came in from different points, and there were some people who came from like Oxford University, Cambridge University, and then there was me from Sheffield Uni. And even though it's a great university, it wasn't as good as the
I mean, Oxford, you go anywhere and they know it, and you're like, Sheffield, where's that? Exactly. Is that London?
Yeah, exactly. Where is that, right? And so I felt a really bad imposter syndrome, and my confidence was really low in the first few months of starting at work, and I think that really affected my performance the first few months. But yeah, I really relate to everything you both said about cultures, parents and their influence, and just that, childhood upbringing. And, I didn't really think about that until you both mentioned it.
It makes sense though, because if you're constantly held to a high standard, I find that I'm slowly unpacking a lot of the things that happened to me during childhood. I'm just walking down the street and then I blank out and I'm like, oh, this happened. When I was 6, I was traumatized. And it's stuff like that. It just comes out, and I feel like if you can subconsciously remember things, and you can have reactions that you built up over multiple years when you're younger, and then suddenly you automatically react to something. I definitely had conversations when my partner reacted in a certain way and I got very defensive. He didn't mean any wrong. It's just that I was brought up getting defensive because I knew that this kind of tone would lead to something bad, even though he just said it casually, not thinking about it.
Oh my God, I feel you've just put into words everything I've been feeling. That's so relatable. And on that similar note, around upbringing and stuff, I see a similar thing with my younger brother. So my younger brother is growing up now. He's 15, I think. I don't actually know how old he is, but he's growing up now, and I can see a sort of difference in upbringing between my sister and I as women and my brother as a man. And I feel like he's a lot more confident. He doesn't really experience the same sort of feelings around low confidence and stuff. And I think that's all sort of tied into the fact that women experience imposter syndrome more than men because of their upbringing. And yeah, it's just really interesting. Yeah.
I think it's not just because I think when you say upbringing, it also implies that parents play a role, but I know that's not what you meant. But I think it's a society thing as well, because
for sure.
There's so many sayings that slowly get ingrained into you. For example, I don't know if you've all been told when you were younger, oh, girls mature more faster than boys, and therefore, suddenly you're like, oh yeah, I mature more, so if we get in a fight, I'm the responsible one. I need to be the perfect person here in this room, even though they all don't care. It's fine. I think it's just representation in the media and everything. Yes. I think it just compounds. Even if nobody who made any of these things meant wrong, you just pick it up as a child.
Yeah, because when you're younger, you think that adults are infallible, and you think that anything that they say is gospel. When I was applying for uni, I really wanted to. I've always loved physics. When I was 9 years old, I remember for a show and tell, I took in a little telescope to school, and I was like, when I grow up, I'm going to be an astronomer. I've always wanted to do physics. I've loved physics so much ever since I was young. And then when it came to like applying for unis and stuff, I was also still thinking of applying to do physics. And then I remember talking to my A-level teacher about it, and he was like, well, you know, I don't really think that you should do that. I don't really think you'll be good enough. Even though I was getting the best grades than the other two boys in my class. But just because I was not a boy, he was like, oh yeah, I don't think you should be applying to uni. And then it's just like stuff like that when you feel like adults know everything when you're that age and you just trust that they know better than you, but it's actually no, they don't. Like they have all of these, they have these like, what am I looking for? Like these biases, they have all these biases within themselves, and then they project those biases onto you, and then you start to believe them because you're like, well, they must know better than me. But it's not true. It's not true. Like, you know better. Like, you know your own self-worth more than whatever anyone says to you about it.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, that is spot on. Wow, like I just got really, I'm sorry, as I was listening to both of you speak, I've got like a rush of memories of all of these times in my childhood.
Comes back.
Yeah, it's all coming back. Yeah, it's weird. It's really strange. But thank you both for that. That's both really, really insightful. And you know, so far I've gathered from our conversation and how like, you know, imposter syndrome has a huge impact on all of us and in sort of all different on your like upbringing or your culture or whatever. So it's just really interesting to hear the diversity of thought in terms of that. And I think sharing stories of moments when we experienced it may be a good way to open up this conversation a little bit more and remind people who may identify with it that they're not alone. And so my next question is around, could you share a story of when you first remembered you experienced it? And I think this is really important to share just because I think some people may not be aware of it, but once they hear stories, it might sort of resonate to them a little bit more. So yeah.
I'll let you go first, Sonia.
Thank you. I think I was quite carefree as a child. I don't know. I would always remember if we go back to like body issues, I always had body image issues. And I remember I was 6 years old when I was walking up the stairs and I was looking at a girl in front of me and I was like, wow, I wish I had her calves. I don't know why calves. I don't know. I was obsessed with them. I thought mine were too thick. I was just too thick. So maybe if that's like, I'm not good enough, but like body image wise. But then I moved from Poland to Belgium and I had to do really weird things in school. So like Latin, ancient Greek, and French. And I never like studied for French spelling tests. And that was like an entire story that included very difficult words to spell. And I would get consistently very, very low grades. And, you know, you had people who were like, they're from Spain, who like their languages are more related, I suppose, you know, they're cousins. But they were doing really well. So they were also immigrants and they were doing really well. And I was like, well, why am I not doing it? Eventually I got better. I was still not perfect, but it was always, you'd always compare yourself. And in school, people would always compare you to others. And you just wished, oh, maybe if I was this perfect kid, if I was just more organized, I would do as well as them. And now they're studying business, so I don't care. Science is better.
True. Yeah, I love that. yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that. I just like, I had a point I wanted to make. Now it's like escaped me. It's escaped me. Yeah, it's escaped me. I can't. It'll come back to me. But yeah, no, thank you. Oh yeah, here it is. Remembered it. Yeah, so a similar thing you were saying about that, you know, seeing that girl's calves and wishing they were yours. It's really interesting because when I was around like 6 or 7 years old, similar to your age, I recall the first time I had like a body image issue, and it was at school because I used to get bullied a lot at school because my sister and I were one of the only non-white people in the school because my parents moved it to a very white area of Sheffield to make sure we got like the best education. It's where the best school was. And so we moved there, and I remember one time people saying there was this boy in my class saying like, "Oh, have you seen the school photo? Like Pauline is like really brown. She's like so brown compared to the rest of us." And I remember feeling really, really like terrible about myself and
No, you
really
should feel
upset.
good
Yeah.
because when you age, you look so beautiful and he'll just be wrinkly.
I know, exactly, you know, I just wish I could go back and tell her that. But anyways, and I remember one time where I was feeling like I wish I could be whiter and I wish I could have like, so there was loads of different like girls in my class and I was always like looking at their like different features and I was like, if I only had her eyes, her nose, her skin color, her hair color, I'd be like perfect. And it was like stuff like that and it sort of just piled on. It was like really, it's really sad when I think about it now because I can hardly imagine myself thinking that now. I'm really happy with what I look like right now and I don't know, I can't believe like younger me would even say things like that to herself. But there you go, yeah.
Yeah, that's completely relatable. Like I was the same. Like I was brought up in a very, very white area. Well, I grew up in Australia for like 6 years. Like, I did all my primary school in most of my primary school in Australia. And it was really multicultural, and like I never even thought about my skin color at all when I was growing up in primary school. And then I moved to England. And then that's where I first experienced racism and like directed at me, directed at my sister. And then that's when I start to realize, oh, actually, I am different to a lot of people around here. And especially in school, like, yeah, like being like racially abused in school and even like going back to just body images, like the amount of people used to call me like gorilla arms and stuff like that just because I had like dark, hairy arms. And you're like, come on, like bullying someone like at that age, it's just so sad. And then you harbor these emotions and harbor these feelings towards yourself until like 20 years later, you know, you still have these feelings, and it's from these like random losers like in school just like saying something at you.
And it's really sad. I remember my first job, I had a similar thing where I would hear gossip about me and I'd hear like a manager or someone I'd work with had said something about me, and like I've not said this in out loud before, but basically at my previous job we had a yoga session every Wednesday, and I remember my first yoga session I was really excited because I wanted to get into yoga, and I wore like my yoga stuff, like my leggings and a yoga top and like another a sports bra and then a top on top of the sports bra, and then I went
gym
to
appropriate.
Yes, it makes sense, right? And then did my yoga session, then came back, and then a few months later I found out that a group of my colleagues actually started calling me names and commenting on my body and saying some really mean things, and I only heard that from another colleague who I then became quite close friends with, and she finally said to me, "Oh, by the way, this is what was said about you, and I didn't want to tell you when you first started because it was like your third week." And I was like, "Oh," and it made me feel awful because then now I had this anxiety going near this group of people moving forward, and then every time like I had to work with them in some aspect, I had that low confidence, and so when they gave me a task, I felt that imposter syndrome, and I felt that like I couldn't be perfect, and even though I tried my best to like please them, I just couldn't, if that made sense. And it sort of again relates back to that the bullying that I experienced. Yeah, all connects, doesn't it?
What a bunch of pathetic people, though. Oh, I want to go fight them. Let's find them and fight them. Like, how pathetic.
After that, I was like, I'm very particular about like when I work out, for example, like near colleagues and stuff, I've been very like covered just because I don't want people to comment. Whereas when I'm in the gyms and stuff, I like go all out. I'm fine, but like. Yeah, but it was just like I wasn't revealing anything. I was genuinely just wearing
it's just normal gym attire that everybody would wear.
Yeah, so
they just needed to mind their own business, and they.
And the worst thing is that this is, for example, a really good case of, you know, it's difficult to go to HR in this situation because they would know you would be ostracized afterwards for that between them because you work closely with them. It's not easy.
Exactly, and it's tough, and that's why again it all links together. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Sonia. Did you want to add anything to that, Pratiksha?
Yeah, I think for me it's really hard to pinpoint a time when I first experienced imposter syndrome because I feel like it's always been there. kind of going back to the previous question a little bit as well, like, I would be really surprised if no one had ever experienced imposter syndrome. But I feel like it's the way you react to the imposter syndrome that differs from person to person. Like, for example, like, say if you're in, like, say if you both became actors and were performing, like, I'm sure you'd get like pre-theatre jigs and all those nerves. But for some people, they can take that and put into adrenaline and really push them forward. Whereas for me, at times when I feel like quite low and nervous, I can't take that feeling and push myself on further. I take that feeling, I like cover myself in that feeling, I mellow in that feeling, I make myself feel even worse about that feeling. My internal monologue is just like pounding at me even more and more. So I feel like yeah, like I said, I'd be really surprised if no one had experienced imposter syndrome, because everyone second guesses themselves, right? Everyone is like, oh, maybe I didn't do this well enough, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But for me, I take those feelings and sometimes I can make them even worse. And I'm trying to learn to be more kind to myself, and I'm trying to be like, this is completely irrational. The only person that is thinking this is you, and I'm trying to move away from when I have those feelings to try and be more kind to myself. But it's really difficult, and I'm still not there yet. And every time I experience it, I feel like I deal with it a bit better, but I'm still not there with being kind to myself.
I think it is a journey though, isn't it? And I think that really like links well with my next and final question. Actually, time has flown by. But if someone who's listening to this right now is like, yes, I definitely identify with everything we've all said around, why we experience imposter syndrome, where it's come from and the roots and stuff. And yeah, they really relate to that, but they feel very overwhelmed on how they should deal with it. What would your advice be to them? And, what has helped you in your moments of imposter syndrome, just to like reel you back in, to remind you of what is important?
Go first.
So like I said before, I've only been in this job for 4 weeks. And then in my second or third week, one of my colleagues, we were just chatting, and he was like, do you ever get, this feeling? I think it's called imposter syndrome. I was like, oh my God, yes, like almost every single day. And just him like opening up and saying that to me, like that was the first time I'd ever talked about it in a work environment or in a school environment, uni environment. That was the first time someone had ever asked me if I'd experienced it. And just the fact that he'd been going through it, it just made me feel so much better about it as well, and made me feel like I wasn't alone in this, and making me realize that, yeah, like I think a lot of people do experience it, but sometimes you feel completely alone when you're going through it. But knowing that, maybe everyone else has also experienced it. And it was also really good because he'd only started like 2 or 3 months before me, so he was still like going through the onboarding process and trying to figure things out. So the fact that he was still feeling those feelings made me feel better about the fact that, okay, it's okay if I still feel like this way in like a few months' time or whatever. A practical tip, not that I've done it yet, I'm gonna do it, is I was listening to another talk about imposter syndrome recently, and this really good piece of advice I thought was to track what you've been doing and have a one-to-one with yourself every 3 months or so, and keep doing this as a regular thing, and then keep a track of it so that you can see how far you've come, and if you've got any goals, like just check in and see if you've met those goals, if those goals still align with what you want to do in 3 months' time. And I think that's a really good practical tip, and I'm definitely going to be doing that going forward, just to check up on myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I literally stand by that last point. I've been doing it since 2017, and I have a folder in my Google Drive full of like screenshots of people saying like, well done, good job, or just feedback that I've had at work, and also like a master spreadsheet just of everything that I've learned over the past few years. And, when I look back at that spreadsheet, I feel super chuffed with myself because I learned DevOps, I learned how to, how to like deploy things into production and stuff like that. And I've learned a lot, and, I shouldn't discredit myself for that. So yeah, that's a really good practical advice. I think in this conference I went to, it's called You Got This Conf, and it's like a conference that talks about, these softer skills in tech and how important it is to have softer skills in tech. And they had a talk on imposter syndrome, and the lady that gave it, she said, you need to create a brag document, and I love that. That again, it's sort of like everything what we've been saying in terms of a practical advice. And yeah, it's just really, really important to do that, I think. And just one thing to add to your earlier point about your colleague sharing with you, I thought that was really lovely, because I think one of the reasons I got you on board to this podcast, obviously because you're great and I've been following you for a while on Twitter and stuff like that, but one of your tweets really resonated with me. And I think you said something like, it can be quite isolating being a woman in tech, because in person you feel like no one else is experiencing the same things that you experience. And so that, I think that relates back to that community aspect and that connection aspect, and making sure that you speak to other people and be open about how you're feeling, because someone else might be feeling exactly the same thing. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing.
Completely. Like, I can be quite a private person, like, letting others know that you're vulnerable and letting others know that you're not going through a good time. Like, from that tweet, I got my new job because it was some person, right? It's just like being so vulnerable online made me leave my old job and get this new job, and like it's opened up so many doors for me. And like, just, I would also say, if you are struggling, reach out to someone, and chances are they're also struggling in just the same way, or they have been struggling in the past and they can really support you. So don't be afraid of like being vulnerable as well about your struggles.
Yeah,
that's really, really good.
You're so right. Yeah. I just wanted to add on to the fact that you're so right in the sense that you need people to share the same struggles with you. I think every time I meet somebody and you talk about these things, it makes you feel like you're not alone. And I think the problems, like all the mental issues that we have been compounded by COVID, because you're sitting alone and you're so isolated. And, PhDs and research, as well as many other jobs, you just get stuck in issues one after another and you feel like you're not progressing. So sharing that can really help you. And especially when you're like at home, you can't go get a coffee and talk to your coworker about how annoying Stacy is in the reception. I don't know. Yeah, I think that is one thing. And another thing is surround yourself with really supportive people. And I think you being vulnerable also allows other people to like reassure you. So I sometimes I told my supervisor when I wrote a draft for a paper, I was like, I don't think this is valuable, new, novel contribution to science. And she's like, no, but the first papers suck anyways. It's good that you finished it. You've learned so much. Is that I don't like my first paper. I'm still here. Or, talking to your boss if they're a good boss. I know when I was interning in Penn and Teller, she would reassure me, Charlotte Bailey, she's amazing. She would reassure me that no, what you're doing has contributed, because we didn't have anybody on board that was able to do it or was willing to do it. So I think talking to people and having like a, supportive partner, supportive friends, be open about what you doubt, and they should. Well, they don't force them, don't tie them up and tell them like, tell me nice things about me, please. But usually good people will reassure you, and you could reassure them. That's what you're there for.
I agree with that. I just wanted to add on, like, as a junior, like if you're a senior like listening to this, even a simple good work, you don't know how much that means to someone who's really junior. Like just that little validation, like, because at times you'd finish a ticket, or you'd put a lot of work into this project or whatever, and then you'd be like, okay, well, move on to this next thing. But no, you should, like, if you're managing someone, just say good work. Like that means so much. Just that little bit of reassurance means so much to someone who's going through this.
You're so right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why, like, recently I started the community Ladies in DevOps, and we've got several different channels where people sort of just cheer each other on. And we've also got a support channel, so if anyone's feeling down that week, or they're feeling that imposter syndrome or whatever, they jump on there, and then we all sort of, as a community, we're a community of 480 members, we all just jump in and we're like, everything's okay, don't worry. And it's this, you know, and it's sometimes that's all you need to help beat your imposter syndrome. Like my partner, Matt, he is the most supportive person ever. He's gone through all of my breakdowns, all of my, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it. And he's always been like, no, you are. You can do it. Like, look at all the things that you've done in the past. You can do this one. It's just another thing that you're going to add to the list. So yeah, definitely surround yourself with supportive people for sure. I think that's the
gas yourself up. Like you mentioned it, Pawlean, before. Like, don't be afraid of bragging about your achievements. I don't even think it's bragging. Just saying it out loud, because oh my God, the amount of mediocre white men that, like, you know, oh my God, like I woke up this morning, go me. Like we need to be like
wake up at 4:30 and plant 300 tomatoes and sell them all for 1 million each.
This is it. Yeah, absolutely. That was such a good Spawn impression. I feel like I've seen that in a tweet.
If I plant one tomato, I'll get 30 tomatoes tomorrow, and in 3 years, I'll be a millionaire. Scale.
That's it. If they can have that confidence, so can we. So yeah, no, that was so good. We've actually reached the end of this podcast. Does anyone else want to add anything before I move on to the...
One thing is when you hype yourself up, I like to imagine myself as the Legally Blonde main character. Aside from writing things, I think it's good to walk around with music in your ears and like being like, oh, I'm here, and I'm doing things. I don't know, how did you get here? I cannot believe that you passed the test. Really? Oh, like it's hard. It doesn't have to be realistic. It doesn't have to be rational. You just have to own it, because you don't have to be perfect anytime. Like you don't have to have valid, realistic reasons to feel good about yourselves as well. Like it's great if you do, but you don't have to have them.
I absolutely love that. I love that, because I walk around my flat and I'm always like, whoa, I'm amazing, and I pretend I'm Beyonce, and even though there's not like some substance sometimes, like I haven't achieved a lot like that day, I'm still feeling good. You need to hype yourself up, don't you?
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, thank you both so much for all your contributions. I'm feeling super reflective right now, and I'm sure when I go back and like listen to this and edit this, I'm gonna feel exactly the same way. But you've both just opened up so many thoughts in my head, and it feels great. I feel really good now. But before we just conclude it, could you tell our audience and our listeners today, where can they find you if they want to find out more about the sort of stuff that you work on?
Pratiksha, go first.
So on Twitter and then it's my first name with 2 underscores. And I recently started a newsletter, and I've only posted 2 newsletters so far, but I'm posting one next week just as like a wrap up of my first month as a data engineer, going into a new role, knowing absolutely nothing. And, I'm going to be sharing more about my experiences within this role, as well as non-tech stuff. So I'm basically on everywhere at Pratiksha __, like Instagram, Twitter, everywhere. You can find me on that.
I'm gonna subscribe to your newsletter ASAP.
Yes, same. I did not know. I am late to the party. For me, it's Twitter at s.dembowska, I think. I'm sure that when this comes out, you will learn the spelling of my last name, because, it's a tough one. For Instagram, once upon a time, I got my hair dyed and I called it hazel.hue. I need to change it, but for now it's hazel.hue. You know my hair color now. And for my blog, it's accessed memory everywhere. Just accessed memory anything. We're going to be publishing usually once a week. And you don't need to have any knowledge in AI or data analysis to follow along, but we're just going to introduce different concepts and talk about different things. So yeah, thank you so much.
Exciting. Thank you both so much. Thank you.
She ain't never met